ग्लोबल स्किल डेवलपमेंट मिशन में आपका स्वागत है।
All right, now on to one of the most important aspects of Photoshop, layers. Of course, I think I said that at the beginning of the previous chapter on selections. I said on to selections, one of the most important aspects of Photoshop. Really, Photoshop is all about creating really great selections and really getting comfortable with layers. I would say these two subjects are they really sort of make up the fundamentals of Photoshop. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here talking about layers, working with layers. If you're brand new to all this, if you've never done this sort of thing before, I think it might take a little bit of time until your brain clicks. I'm going to say a few things, talk about some fundamentals. I might repeat some stuff. Somewhere along the line, your brain is going to flip a switch and go, oh, I get it. I understand exactly how it works. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to work through this with you, and by the end of this, we're going to be layer experts. So here we go. First of all, we need an image. I went and closed out of my previous image. So let's go and open up an image. I've gone and thrown in a few extra files into our project files folder for you and I to work with. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab this guy right here, which I happen to be hovering over top of, statue.jpg. Go ahead and pop this guy open inside Photoshop. And we were out for a drive, I think one Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and happened across this really cool statue, so I took a quick photograph of this. As a matter of fact, this is going back a few years. But in any regard, here we go. Here's our photo. Now, I'm going to go and head for my layers panel over on the right-hand side. Go ahead and grab this guy. By the way, if you want, give me a second here. I'm just going to collapse this guy down. If you like your keyboard shortcuts, try hitting F7 on your keyboard. Isn't that cool? So F7 on your keyboard to activate your layers panel. Just kind of a neat trick. Now, as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear away my layers panel just so we can sort of zero in on him and kind of focus our attention on him. So here he is. Now, what we see right away inside the layers panel, I would say most prominently inside the layers panel, is this guy here. It says background, and he's highlighted. This is what's referred to as the background layer. And we're going to be talking in some great detail about background layers in just a few minutes. However, keep this in the back of your mind. Notice the padlock icon suggesting that the layer here, the background layer, is locked or uneditable. So keep that in the back of your mind. As far as the rest of the layers panel is concerned, it looks like there's a lot of cool stuff here, but it's all grayed out. We can't use any of it. But I'll at least give you the 5-cent tour here. This first bar running across the top of the layers panel allows us to filter our layers. There's actually a huge array of different layer types, text layers and masks and path layers and all kinds of great stuff. So that's one option we can use. I have to be honest, I very rarely filter my layers, but it is there for you if you want to make use of it. The next guy down, we have this drop-down menu. He's grayed out for the time being. We'll take a look at this guy in just a little while. The tooltip is telling me that I can use this drop-down menu to set what's referred to as the layer's blending mode. For the time being, think of this as the color effect or the special effect for the layer. Okay? Then, just adjacent to that, we have the opacity. We can change the opacity or the transparency of the layer. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then beneath that, we have some lock options for the layer as well, which kind of relates to the lock icon that we have there. And then beyond that, we have some icons running across the bottom. If you want, you can hover over top of these guys. The tooltips will hopefully help you along here. We can create new layers. We can create what's referred to as a layer groups. We can delete layers using the trash can there and so on. Lots of other great stuff in there. And don't forget, of course, we also have the layers panel menu, which is loaded full of tons of options. Again, many of them grayed out for the time being. Okay? All right, so that's the 5-cent tour. Let's move on now. I want to talk about the background layer, and this is really sort of layer fundamentals, layers 101 here. So the background layer, he's uneditable. Right now, my photograph that you and I have in front of us is flat. So we can't really edit him. There's not a whole lot really that we can do to this guy in his present state. If you take a photograph with your digital camera or, even your mobile device, something like that, open it up inside Photoshop, that image, I should say, is going to be flat. You're going to see a background layer. Or if you download an image from the web and open it up inside Photoshop, he's going to be flattened. He's going to have a background layer. Okay, let me show you this inside the panel menu. The panel menu has an option here called Flatten Image, and Flatten Image is grayed out because the image is already flat. Okay? So, in other words, inside this image, there are no objects that are hovering over top of other objects. Everything's kind of compressed down and flattened. However, let me show you this. I'm going to shove this guy out of the way, just kind of tuck him out of the way for the time being. I'm going to go and open up another file from our project files folder. I'm going to go and grab, remember this one, gogetterray.psd. Go ahead and pop this guy open. So this is gogetterray. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit. Notice that gogetterray also has a background layer, which is also locked, but it also has a gogetterray layer as well. So we have two layers inside this image. When I select the background layer, everything's kind of grayed out towards the top. If I select gogetterray, suddenly the layer options towards the top spring to life. Interesting. Keep that in mind. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here is if I were to head to the panel menu, there's my flatten image command now available, suggesting that this image is not flattened, he's fully editable. So again, reinforcing this idea that images with only background layers, like our statue, are flat images. This image that we have here has multiple layers, so he's not flattened. Now, what is this concept of layers? Well, I want you to think of your background layer as a white piece of paper. What we can do with this column over on the left-hand side is we can turn on or turn off the layer visibility. So I'm going to disable the visibility of my background layer just by clicking inside that column. Notice all the white inside the background disappears and it's replaced with a checkerboard pattern. This is important, by the way. The checkerboard pattern inside Photoshop indicates transparency. So in other words, wherever I see the checkerboard pattern, we have nothing. We don't have any pixels. It's not like we have gray and white pixels. We have no pixels at all. It's clear. It's see-through. Imagine it's on a piece of glass or on a clear piece of acetate, something like that. Have you ever been in a classroom and the teacher sets up the overhead projector and you kind of groan to yourself? Imagine it's the same concept. So here we have a piece of acetate with an image on it, okay, sitting on an overhead projector. What happens if the teacher comes along and puts down a white piece of paper underneath that acetate? Well, all the clear area now fills in with white. That's the exact same idea that we have going on here. And by the way, your images can have a huge number of layers as well. Okay? Now, let me show you this. I hope you're getting all this. I hope this is making sense here. I'm on my Move tool inside the toolbox, and I also have gogetterray selected inside the Layers panel. So what I can do is I can actually drag around inside the image to move the object that resides on the gogetterray layer. I can move him around inside the image. Okay? This is really what layers are all about, being able to edit and work with our files. If I go and grab my statue, which was kicking around there down towards the bottom, I'm still on the Move tool. I have the background layer selected. If I try and move the statue around inside the image, he's not going to move. And as a matter of fact, Photoshop's going to give me a warning. He's going to say, hey, I couldn't use the Move tool because the layer is locked or uneditable. Okay, I hope that makes sense. In just a little while, I'll show you how to convert a background layer to a regular old Photoshop layer. Okay, so I hope this is making sense here. I'm going to show you one more quick example. Give me a second here. I'm going to double click on a little sliver of background here. And I'm going to go and grab this guy here. Remember this guy, always bright ideas. I'm going to go and open him up inside Photoshop. I want to show you this guy because this is a file that we've already seen once or twice, and he has that checkerboard pattern. Check out his layers panel. It just says layer 1. There's no background layer, meaning there's nothing underneath this guy. There's no sheet of white paper in my overhead projector example. So all I have is just this cartoon robot head, and I can move him around inside the image like so. Okay? So sometimes your images will only have a background layer. Oh, I wouldn't minimize that guy in any regard. Sometimes only a background layer. Sometimes they'll only have regular layers. Sometimes they'll have both. Okay, it really depends on the image that you have. What I do want to say, though, is that it really depends on the file format as well. Notice that gogetterray is a Photoshop document, a native Photoshop document, as is always Bright Ideas. And if I go and grab my clouds again, or sorry, my statue.jpg, there he is. He's a JPEG, as I just mentioned, JPEG. So JPEG does not support layers. Interesting. But native Photoshop documents do support layers. Keep that in mind as well. So there's so much more that I want to show you here. I hope this serves as a decent introduction for you related to layers. Let's now go and get our hands even dirtier inside the layers panel. I want to show you how to work with multiple layers, how to create new layers, how to convert your background layers to regular layers, all kinds of great stuff. So let's dig into it all.